Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is Dynamics 365 Project Operations, Billing, and Invoicing. I'm Otto. I'm your technical moderator today. We're broadcasting this session through Teams Live Events. The audio will be heard through your device speakers. The session is going to be recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation, and when you join this event, your name, email address, and or phone number may be viewable by other session participants in this attendee list. By joining, you're agreeing to that experience. The recording itself will be available for you over on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within the coming weeks. If you happen to have any questions for our presenters throughout the session or need support, feel free to go ahead and use that Q&A panel located on the right-hand side of the screen. You'll see a few notes that I've put in there as well regarding closed captioning, and if you have any technical issues today as well, that's a place to be. So with that, thanks for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Veselina Aneva, Senior Program Manager, Roman Abilkatov, Senior R&D Solution Architect, and Martin Walker, Senior Solution Architect. So with that, Veselina, over to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Otto. And hello, everyone. We're so happy to be with you on this sunny summer day. Let's kick on. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone about this great resource published by the Fast Track team, the Implementation Guide. It contains our collective experience when it comes to best practices for implementing Dynamics 365 applications. Topics such as project governance, methodology, environment management, post-go live service are included. We highly recommend to you to check it out. As part of this Tech Talk, we plan to go through managed billing and invoice processes that are available in Project Operations. These processes are reviewed in the context of resource non-stock deployment or integrated deployment for Dynamics 365 Project Operations. What we will not cover today are deployment types, detailed aspects of the data migration and integrations, licensings, or technical details. Some of these topics are already covered in other Tech Talks, which are part of this series. Our agenda for today is to go through the billing and invoice processes, including invoice corrections and intercompany invoicing. We will dedicate most of the time on demo how that works in Project Operations. We'll share at the end with you the data entities that underlie these processes and provide you with some links for additional info. Maybe here is the best place to clarify how we distinguish billing and invoicing, as bills and invoices are often used interchangeably in the business sector. We are not aiming for the correct definition. Please don't start the discussion. We merely explain how we define them in our process taxonomy. So billing for us is the process of planning and preparing the schedule and the invoice run. Invoicing is sending and posting to General Ledger the legal documents for the goods and services we provided. That is essentially the professional way of requesting money for our work. You're probably quite familiar already with this diagram that shows the three deployment types as well as the components that are part of each one. As mentioned in the beginning, we won't be going into details, but it is worth reminding everyone that the light version of Project Operations make use of Dataverse only and wrap up the project for the web engine for schedule management. The stock-based scenario deployment is targeting the project financials only, and it's available as a module in the Finance and Operations app. Finally, the resource non-stock-based scenario is a cross-platform with both Dataverse and Finance and Operations communicating through dual-write. Today, we'll be focusing only on the resource non-stock-based scenario. This high-level diagram showcases the end-to-end Project Operations business scenario and how different areas interact with each other. Today we'll be focusing on billing and invoicing, and of course we cannot do that without going a little bit through project contracts and the project planning. For other business processes, please check out our Project Operations Tech Talk series. This and the next slide will show you different process diagram perspective of the billing and invoicing capabilities. This is a very high-level representation of how Project Operations enables billing and invoicing flow diagram. In a nutshell, everything that is ready to be invoiced is transferred from Dataverse to F&O through integration journal and the proforma invoices. When posted on the finance side, cost and revenue are reflected in the project ledger, general ledger, and the respective customer ledger. Following the same structure as we had in our previous tech talks, in the billing and invoicing, we identified 5 main personas, that being the team members who is usually doing the work and book actuals, the project manager responsible for planning, scheduling, estimating project, and very often creating the initial pro forma invoices, the account receivable clerk and the project accounting taking care about the financial part of the invoices processes, and of course the finance manager overseeing everything. You can see a snapshot of the main processes that are enabled during billing and invoicing, the configuration required, the data entities that you may want to utilize if you're integrating or importing data from external system, and of course the main integration that is required as a standard Dataverse capabilities. Now, if you're implementing project operations, and especially if you're a solution architect, you would need to create a similar project operations process architecture. Here is how we see billing and invoicing processes look like on a level 2 and 3, following the operational and the logical sequence of the operations. We will demo most of these today in the same sequence. So let's start with the billing. The first thing worth mentioning is some terminology. The project contract lines define the billing method associated with the project transactions. We identified 2 main billing methods. The first one being fixed price. This is a type of billing in which the customer pays a predetermined amount for the entire project, usually on specific milestones. Time and material are projects where the customer is billed for all the costs that are incurred on a project. This includes cost for hours, expenses, items, and fees. Dynamics 365 project operations support retainer-based contract. Even though it is not a billing method per se, it does support the billing methods in a way that you can set an equally distributed payments that the customer will be invoiced for throughout the duration of the project. This type of contract is typically used for time and materials or consumption-based billing models where there is need to give the customer a predictable invoice and payment schedule. Not to exceed limit is mentioned here because it's very important control and validation on our billing schedule. There is a new variation method in our roadmap that is called progress-based billing on fixed price contracts, where a portion of the milestone is invoiced each period instead of the whole milestones as it is now. So watch the space, this coming next year. The second step down detailing the billing is the billing type. So we distinguish chargeable, non-chargeable, and complementary billing types, which are a field on all the transactions that are going through our billing and invoicing. The not available is a billing type that is used on the approval and actual line of the time, expenses, and material usage when it maps to a contract line that is fixed price billing method. So even if you put that the specific time is chargeable, if that is linked to a fixed price contract line, eventually the system will convert it to not available. So as part of the managed billing process, the first thing you need to do is create some scheduling. So on the fixed price, you schedule your milestones. On the time and material contract lines, you schedule your invoice run that can be picked from automated invoicing that will be showed later by Roman to you. You can have some flexibility and drill down even more and do some additional scheduling on the different methods through the task billing setup. You can set up manage not to exceed on a contract level or on a time and material lines. And you can also create, as I mentioned earlier, the project contract advances and retainers. As part of our story today, we're covering only few scenarios. However, in real life, you may encounter many other combinations. We appreciate how flexible managing projects could be, and especially for the folks who are used to project hierarchies and coming from the PMA world, here we can show you how you can leverage project contract, the lines and the billing methods. And here we can give you some additional common scenarios that you can use as a reference later on when you try to design your billing and invoicing. So let's now move and show you how that works in the system. Let's start now with our story on a fictional company, Parks and Recreations, working with our functional customer SX councils, where we try to improve the central park and make it better for the people who's visiting. So we're creating first initial contract with them, and we agree that we're not going to exceed 20,000 limit. Then we need to create contract lines. So let's start with a fixed price contract line. And here we agree that our discovery time together with expenses will be built on a fixed price method. We may include some fees as well throughout the project. Let's save that line. And let's go and apply our billing method on a time and material. So on the time and material, we discussed that we're going to include our design and plan time. We put some rough estimation for the time that we're going to spend here, and we pass this information to the project manager. So the project manager picks everything that they knows for the moment from the contract lines, and go and start estimating a little bit more on that deal with the customer. So let's put the hat of a project manager and switch to the project. So we already created the project here. We add all the tasks we need. We assigned a generic resources to our tasks. We adjusted the timeline and we added some interdependencies. We estimated roughly that we're going to finish mid-September with our work. We did some estimation on the expenses in terms of miles and meals that we may have, and some estimation on the plans that we're going to build. And here's the overall. We saw that our total cost is around 11.5, and our total sales will be 23, which is a little bit more than we initially discussed with the client. So far, we don't have any link to the contract, but we're going to rectify it just in a second. So we're opening the contract line, and here, as you can see, there is no project. But through the project field, we can link it with the project we just created. You see the error message that the billing milestone should be 3,000 as on the line. And we're going to rectify this just in a second by going to Invoice Schedule tab. We click, we add invoice frequency, billing start date, and then we click on Generate Periodic Milestones. And that's it, as simple as that. We have 2 milestones created for September and October to bill equally our customers as 1,500. Let's save that line and go to our time and material contract line. We attach again the project here. And we can add an invoice schedule if we'd like only at this point. On the project contract lines, we can add additional details to estimate our contract, but you can do it through here, but it's very good idea to do this through the project where we already estimated how a project would work. So as we can see here on the projects now, we link the lines. Oops, we linked only one of them. So let's save the time and material line. That one is good. So let's look at the project again. We only need to refresh it. And the second contract line on the project pops in here too. There we go. So we have the two contract lines linked to our project. And we can add some task billing setup. As we mentioned, the discovery task, we agree that this will be built on a fixed price. So we're adding this to the design and planned discovery and expenses order line. And by doing this link, we determine that all the time that we book on our discovery task, it will be built on a fixed price method. So we do the same with all the other lines, and we're adding them to the design and planned task line. Let's finish with all of them. And here I'm showing you how you can be flexible with all the tasks, and everything that you do on the project can be linked to a different method on the order side. Let's save it. And go back to our order. So now that we assigned the different tasks to our order line, we can bring in the details here. Click on the project contract line details and import from project estimate. By doing that, everything that we linked as an estimation on the project to this contract line will be brought in here. Just a second. And there you go. Here on the time and materials, we see the materials, and all our time that will be billed for the three tasks are here. All the prices are transferred here as well. And you can use this for your initial baseline amount. The contracted amount reflected the amounts that we brought in, and we can run the billing schedule. This billing schedule will be picked up only by the automated invoice posting that you're going to see later on. And we have 3 invoices run for August, September, and October decided to have at the moment. So let's do the same with the fixed price contract line. We click on project contract line details. We're adding import from project estimates. And with the click of a button, you have your initial estimation in a detailed place here. You can keep this one as it is at the moment. So we have the expenses and the discovery line. Even though you change your estimates on the project level, you can always keep this as your initial baseline budget and compare with it later on. You see the contracted amount has changed a little bit based on our detailed estimates. The only thing we need to do is click again on Generate Periodic Milestones, and the milestone amounts will be updated automatically for you. There you go, 1605. So let's look how our contract look like. So we created the contract. We have not to exceed limit. We can have more than one customers if we need for that. The only thing from our processes is set up some retainers. Here you can be very flexible, but I can only show you how we're going to set up 2 deposits, one at the beginning of the project and one mid-project, just to ensure our work is going and the client is committed. So I'm just picking 2 as a number, invoice frequency at the month end, and let's say that we'd like to have 500 at the beginning, 500 midway. I don't want this to be the month end, so let's change it to the 1st of August, And let's even change the invoice status to be ready for invoice. So the next time we run our invoice run, this will be picked up by the system and invoiced to the customer. And that's it. With all the billing processes, we show you the contract lines, and how you attach the project, how you add additional details, and what to be built through the project lines, through the contract lines. On the project information, we link each task to the different billing methods. We link the order lines to our project. We add additional estimation on our expenses and the materials and add them to the different lines, and again, and underline to the different billing methods. And we can even add some additional setup if that's required. Let's say that throughout the project, we decided that this task will not be chargeable anymore, but we'll give it as a complimentary to the customer. The flexibilities are almost endless. So with that said, let's move to the next part of our processes, that's being invoicing. So let's go and run and post some invoices. So first, let's start with our invoicing processes. So what you need to do here is first you need to review your billing backlog. So everything that we explain at the moment, you set up for a good start. Then the people start working on a project and they start to build some actuals. You put some your milestones as ready to invoice. So by doing the reviewing backlog, you check everything that is ready to be invoiced. Once you're happy with this, you just create a pro forma. The pro forma invoices were built as an extension to the invoicing Dynamics 365 sales. However, many differences occur in the invoicing process between sales and project operations. You can now either manually create a pro forma invoice or use a periodic process, as you're going to see in a bit. The project manager then can adjust a draft pro forma invoices as needed, and then the only thing they need to do is confirm it. Once that's confirmed, the integration kicks in. This pro forma invoice is translated to an invoice proposal on the finance side, where the accountant can look at further, apply some adjustment on a tax, for example, and approve and post and distribute the invoices to the customers. And almost all of this can be automated, which is the usual way how you're working. So now I'd like to bring your attention to the different statuses that you're going to see throughout this. So when you create a pro forma invoice, on the top, you're going to see these draft invoices. This is the process that you actually can build and customize yourself, and you can manually move through these different process statuses. The project invoice status and the invoice status summary. Historically, status is built from sales and PSA respectively. So at some point, these statuses will be combined. Some of these are changed automatically from the system. For some of them, you have to manually adjust them. The billing and invoice status is a feature, is a field on your actuals, and this status is changed automatically throughout the system when you move the invoices from one stage to another. On the finance side, the invoices are either with the process open or invoiced. So with that said, I'll hand over to Roman to show you how you're usually going to operate using the automations in the system and be as easy as happy as the robots on this picture. Roman, over to you.
Thank you, Selena. Thanks for a great introduction to the billing and invoicing process. I'm going to start by showing the automated invoicing flow across Dataverse and finance operations that most companies would like to follow, and then explain the details of this configuration of that automation. And after that, Veselina will demonstrate a detailed manual process that you may want to follow until you get confidence in the solution and then automate. So let's go to demo. Let's say we want to invoice our customer, and let's go to our project and go to advances and retainers. And let's say we want to take these 3 advances and make them as ready to be invoiced. Let's mark them and click on ready to be invoiced, and then invoice automation would pick them up based on our invoice schedule, as Veselina was showing, or in our case, for simplicity, we'll just create the invoice manually. Here our project manager would review this project invoice, and when everything is fine, you click on the confirm button. Once it's confirmed, it will automatically flow through dual write to finance and operations. And what is left for me to do is only to validate that everything is posted correctly. Behind the scenes, there is an automation working that will post the transactions. But let me go and show you how it looks on the finance operations. So if I go to my F&O environment and go to my project management and accounting and go to projects, all projects, and search for my customer project. And here I can just go directly or click on the project invoice proposals or invoice journal. And I should be able to see my 3 transactions here. If I minimize this section, here we go. These are the 3 transactions that we mark on the Dataverse site, already invoiced and posted. I can check my voucher. I click in voucher button. Here I can see my amounts. I can see the sales tax is applied. It looks looking good. I can check my posted sales tax here if I want, or I can go and click on the view original to take a look at my printout. I can also configure emailing or printing to PDF from this if that's required. So let's take a look at our printout. This is how it looks. I can see the totals are correct, details, it looks good. So that's the process. And also what I can show is if I go back to my project, I can click on the posted transactions, and here I should see my 3 on account transactions are fully invoiced and posted already. That's how it is done. So let me show you how the automation can be configured. So let's go back to customer engagement, and if I go to my at the bottom under settings and click on the recurring invoice setup, I can create a batch job, a periodic batch job that would create my invoices on a regular basis. So I need to give it a name. It must have the create invoices words in order to correct logic to be picked up. I check the frequency. I select daily or monthly, depending on my needs. And once I save it, I should be able to click on the flow button here on the right and select process run caller. This is the workflow that will be running on a daily basis and picking any transactions that are ready to be invoiced, and based on the invoice schedule as Veselina was showing, and creating the invoices. And if I go to related background processes, here where I'll see my execution. Okay, this will create the invoices, and once the project manager approves them, they should be going to finance operation. So let's automate the finance operation part. So first of all, we want to take actuals and import them from staging to our integration journal. And for that, we want to go to project operations, periodic import from staging table, and set up a recurring batch job. So we ensure that batch processing is set to yes. We give it a name, PROJobs, so that we can easily recognize it. Set it node end date, give a 10-minute interval between the runs, and click OK. This is the first batch job that is added to the queue. And as a next step, we want to take this created invoice journal, the integration journal, and get that posted. So let's go and click on this post project operation integration journal and give it a name again. Click on recurrence, no end date, 10-minute interval, okay, okay. And this batch job will ensure that the transactions, the actuals imported from the custom engagement will be posted. As a last step, we want to get the invoice proposals posted automatically as well. So for that we click on the post invoice proposals batch job. We set late selection. We may want to print or email our invoices here as well. We click on select button to set the criteria for our invoice proposal status transactions to be picked up. By default, the system will pick any transactions that are in status approved and open, and that's fine for me. Click OK. I click this little batch button on the right to set up my recurrence again. I click on recurrence. No end date. Okay, okay, okay. And that asks me to confirm that I'm not going to print, and that's fine for me. And here, if I click on this little button, I can see the 3 batch jobs are added to the queue. And this is all what is required to fully automate my invoicing flow and help project accountants to do the job. They will only need to do some interference if there is some errors that require some manual validation. Okay, that's it. Over to you, Viselina, to continue with the manual flow.
Thank you, Raman. So let me switch to my screen and show you whilst everyone else is looking automation, people on our project was working and there was billing some tasks and materials to our customers. So let's look what happened on the project. So on the task level, we have built our discovery time to the customer. We haven't built it, sorry. We just booked our time as 2 hours, and as well as the architect did some planning already on the planning side. Let's track this as a effort, or you can track it as a cost as well. And let's look how the actual looks like on our project. The same way as we can check on the billing group on our system, we can check all the different views of our actuals and ready to be built. So let's look at the combined actuals. So we have our deposit to the client booked in here. We have a time for our discovery. As you can see, that is only put as a transaction of time cost, whereas the time that we booked on our planning task that is to be built as a time and material method has 2 lines on it, one for cost and one for unbilled sales. That is because it will be built. The same goes for our materials. They have 2 lines, one for cost and one for unbilled sales, whereas the expenses that we agree that it will be built on a fixed price method are only reflected as a cost transaction type. So you can check the project contract milestones, and if a need, any of these can be marked as ready to be invoiced. You have also another view. If you have more than one project, you can look at the actuals on your contract order. And here you can see combinations of all the projects with the same information related on the actuals, just it will be combined in one place for your contract. So now let's go and mark all of them as ready to invoice. And don't worry, even though if you mark all the lines, not all of them will be invoiced to the client. You'll see now how the status has changed. On the lines that need to be billed, we'll see that these are from unbilled sales changed to ready to invoice. The others that are only cost, they will not be picked up by the automation or by the manual creating of pro forma invoice, and it will not become part of the invoice, but they will be only reflected as a cost on our project and respective contract. So now let's go to the order, and we can create invoice from many places, but let's do this from our contract order. Make sure that we have everything that everyone is doing on our project, on our contract reflected, refresh and create an invoice. It will take a few seconds from the system to create our pro forma invoice. And here you can see our project baselines I showed, even though we see the amount only on one of the lines. On the discovery and expense, you will not see an amount to be invoiced. So here we see 925 for our time and the trees that we're going to plan together with the applied advances and retainers. Remember the 500 deposit that we put now is reducing the amount. As a total amount, we have 425. So here the project manager or any other team member responsible for invoicing can go review and apply some changes. Like in our case, we don't want to reduce the amount by the entire deposit, but we'd like to do this by 200. We need to do this with the negative sign. There we go. So the only thing you need to do is to address all the changes that you need to do is just recalculate and refresh your invoice line transactions. So the next step after you do that is to confirm the invoice. So as you can see now our invoices that will be billed to the client is 725. So let's confirm. And now the invoice is transitioned to finance and operations. So you can look at the details clicking on the line to see what it will be built. And here we see our trees that's going to be planted together with the time on our time and material line are reflected. And these are the two lines minus the deposit we see that you're going to see on our finance app on the other side. So let's move there. And the first thing we need to do is refresh on our project. And you'll see that here we have already created the header of our invoice proposal, even though the amount is 0. So in order to bring some amounts, we need to first import from staging. So this triggers all the mappings that's done as part of the due right on the background and bringing the relevant transactions in the relevant place. So let's look first at the project operations integration journal for our date. So we opening our journal, lines, and here our setup is done on a daily basis. For that reason, I see somebody else's transactions, which we're going to delete, but don't worry. The next time you click on import from staging, they will be back again. So here is our time, 4 hours for our planning task, brought in here as a cost and sales. So once we post, this will be reflected in our cost and our WIP items. Why our trees are not here? Let me check. Yes, we definitely brought them as invoicing. Maybe they're already picked up by the automated flow that we checked. So let's pause this journal and then I'll check on the project level what's going on. So let's go to our project again and find it. We're working on a SX Park number 4. And here you can see all the posted transactions or the pending transactions, everything that's coming. Yes, our trees are here. So we have here, again, as you can see, 2 lines. So one is for the cost and one is for the revenue that it will be built. Oops, let's filter again. And here we can see what's happening on our project invoice proposal level. Let's open the invoice. Oh, this is our invoice that is already booked for the deposit. I think I need to refresh it. Yes, so here we have our invoice with the amounts, this time brought in. And as you can see, we have our time on our hour lines, the 4 hours. We have the amount. On the item tab, we'll see our trees that are ready to be invoiced. And on our on account tab, we see the -200 for our deposit. The last step we need to do here is just post. So once we do that, again, the integration will be triggered, and update on the invoice status will be transferred on the Dataverse side and reflected on our actual lines. So that's now done. Let's look at our actuals here. And see how our statuses has changed. First, you notice that we have many more transactions here because the unbilled sales now are already billed sales, and our billing status has changed to customer invoice posted. On the invoice, you can change the status on the top manually. You can also look at the actuals on a project level. Again, refresh, and the same reflection of the actuals and billing and invoice status will be applied here. You can do the same with your milestones, and you can track everything from a invoice or your contract level, as we're mentioning, as you may have more than one project. Here you can see all the invoices that are built on this contract, together with all the actuals related to our order, no matter which project or which customer this was built to. And that's it. As simple as that. Let's move to our next process, level 2, and that is invoice corrections. So you can make edits to confirmed invoices by just, before you confirm the invoice, of course, you can do a lot of edits. You can even delete the invoice and start again. So once you confirm the invoice, you can open the confirm invoice and then select correct this invoice. By doing this, a new draft invoice is created from the confirmed invoice, and all the invoice line details from the previously confirmed invoice are copied into the new draft. And then the adjustment status is changing. So the adjustment status is a component of a actuals. And as you can see here, I used the example from the 500 deposit that we did for the customer. I just picked this invoice, I mark it for correction, and I posted the new invoice. And by doing this, you see how the status changed on the first line to adjusted, then unadjustable, and we left with the new invoice posted to the customer of a $100. So the adjustment process is changing only on the actual side, on the C side, and on the invoice side, the invoice is following the same logic. On the finance side, you can apply changes to your postings, to your tax. And here I posted a link to the corrective project invoice docs article, where you can see a matrix. There is a very good table that I recommend for you to watch out, because it will show you the different key points and understand how the different type of transactions and different type of lines can be corrected throughout the project. As for example, previously confirmed product product-based contract lines and not copied over. Processing correction on the product-based project invoice is not supported at the moment. You'll see that the milestones corrections are always processed in a full credits. The retainers or advances can be corrected if the customer was invoiced for an incorrect amount, as I show you here. You're quite flexible for that. But I don't want to go in every single scenario, but just open the docs article and you see all the possibilities that you have and the stage that you can do that. So let's now move to the next set of our processes, and this is the intercompany invoicing. And I'll hand over to Roman to walk you through that.
Thanks, Betsy. So your organization might want to borrow some products or services from other legal entity. And you can see the business process catalog on the left side, and on the right, there is a diagram that illustrates the relationship between the companies. So the legal entity that provides that additional service or product is called lending legal entity. You can see it on the right side in blue color. The legal entity that receives the service or product is called borrowing legal entity. It is our company that provides the service. You can see it in the middle in the green color, that provides the final service to our final customer, which is on the left. So let's go into the system and I will show you the process. Let's start the demo. Okay. So we have our project, right? And we want to set up our team first of all. So if we go to the team tab, and here we can add our resources. So I added down Phelps, who is from GBPM company, a different company from ours. Here, if I go to the resource and go to scheduling, this is the field company where I can configure my what company my resource belongs to. So let's go and add some actuals. I'll go and add some time and expense. So first of all, if I go to time entries and click on the new time entry button, I can, let's say I worked 1 hour on the project, which is my XX Spark project, and I click on save and close. Here I've got my line, I've validated everything's fine, and click submit to get approval from my project manager. Okay, and now let's go to related and expenses. And let's say we have spent 1 night in a hotel and we want to appropriately charge my borrowing legal entity for that. So if I select my project again, I choose expense category, which is hotel. There we go. And validate everything is fine, and click save and close. This creates another line that I select here, and I can submit it. So once these lines are submitted, my project manager of my borrowing legal entity should be able to go to the approvals and get this approval approved. Okay, so let's go. Let's imagine we switch to our project manager role and go to approvals. Here I can see my time entries that I just entered, and I can approve it. Okay, that's done, and I do the same for my hotel entry, which is under expense entries here. So select the line and click approve. And once it's approved, this will flow through DualWrite into the integration journal automatically based on my automation that I shown you before, and will be posted automatically. So what is only left to do is go to Finance Operations, lending legal entity, GBPM in our case, and I go to my intercompany customer invoice under project invoices. And here I want to invoice my borrowing legal entity. For that, I click on New and select my USPM, which is a borrowing legal entity, and click on the search button. And this should pick the transactions that were imported from customer engagement, my hotel and my 1 hour of work. I click OK, and this creates basically a free text invoice against my USPM company. So I click on post and validate settings and click OK. So while it is posting, it is also creating intercompany vendor invoice on the USPM side. So let me switch to USPM and validate that it is created. So if I go to USPM and go to my accounts payable and click on the pending vendor invoices, I should be able to see my invoice. Yeah, here we go. If I open it, I should see my 2 transactions here. Yeah, we can see it. I can see 1 hour and 1 quantity. I can see the prices are correct. Validate that everything is fine, and I can post it. Yeah, and once it's posted, that's it. That finalizes my intercompany invoicing flow. And if you want to read more about how to configure, there is a doc article that explains the detailed steps how to configure intercompanies. With that, I wanted to cover the data architecture a little bit, in case if you want to make some configuration or some customization of your integration between customer engagement and fine separation. I want to show some diagrams that might be useful, and you can download them later after the tech talks. There will be a PDF file that you can download. So this illustrates the contract lines and project entities that are used on both sides. And you see there is a one-to-one match, more or less. And here we can see the fixed price billing milestones, both on the Dataverse and fine separation sites. You can see there's a bit of different tables involved. And here's the invoicing tables. You can see the invoice header on the left side, invoice lines, details, and actuals, and similar tables on the right side in the fine separation. Okay, with that, I wanted to hand it over back to Iselina to show you the resources available for you to follow.
Thank you, Roman. So here we captured everything that we explained today. You can see this in the resource invoicing. You can see additional information, additional variations and scenarios that are shared with you through these resources. We have also gathered here the general resources that you can utilize for your work on this or other solutions that you need to do, as well as the documentations and learning. We added the last slide with the useful links on the SLA compliance and support, as we see that people very often miss that, which is a very important part of how we operate. And on that note, let's check and see how the Q&A session is going. Martin, is there anything specific that you'd like to bring in, and anything that we may have not answered yet?
Yeah, I think we've answered all the questions along the way. So thanks for all the great questions, and hopefully you got some value out of the answers. There are a couple of other common questions which come up, which I just wanted to highlight as well, seeing that we have the opportunity. The first is, that tends to come up is, why is there a billing process in the Dataverse app, and then also an invoicing process in finance and operations? And really that's about separating the concerns of the project manager and the project accountant personas. The project manager usually knows what work has been done and when it's ready to be billed to a customer, but typically shouldn't have to worry about things like sales tax rates and sales tax jurisdictions and financial dimension impacts and the general ledger and so on. So the project accountant can then manage those independently in the primary app that they use. So fundamentally, that's why we have that split into 2 parts. One where the project manager, as you've seen in this presentation, is processing actuals and marking them as ready to be invoiced, and then creating a pro forma invoice for it, and then a second part where the financial accounting takes place and the final customer-facing invoice, all the correct tax rates and all the correct postings behind those to the GL are created in finance and operations. Another one we see quite often is when an invoice proposal is created as a result of confirming a pro forma invoice in the Dataverse app. Sometimes people are wondering, well, why does that invoice proposal get created with $0? And you've seen how you need to run the import from staging process, whether manually or automatically, to populate an invoice proposal. But even then, sometimes those invoice proposals will remain at $0. And fundamentally, the reason for that is that we want a complete and valid invoice proposal to be created before somebody goes and tries to post it. So there's two checks that are actually happening in the business logic when you import from staging before it will populate an invoice proposal. And one is that all of the billed sales lines have been synchronized from Dataverse. Because obviously you wouldn't want it to be halfway through syncing them and then go ahead and post the invoice and end up with half an invoice. The other reason, of course, is that you also need the upstream accounting to have been done on the related unbilled sales and costs. So there's logic in there which checks to make sure that those integration journals that are related to the invoice proposal have already been posted. So once those two things are true, then the invoice proposal will populate. It will have an amount, and you can be confident that it's now ready to post. The final thing that I just wanted to touch on is we sometimes get questions on, why are there two different expense entry experiences? We refer to the one in Dataverse kind of as quick expenses because that's actually quite descriptive. You saw a little demo of it there that Roman provided where you can very quickly and easily enter an expense. But then there's also the full expense management module in finance and operations. Obviously, our recommendation would be if you have requirements that are better suited to a more complex expense management process with policy rules and workflows and so on, then the expense management module in the finance and operations app would be more appropriate. And then those synchronize over to Dataverse and get treated like any other actuals there. They automatically get approved and the corresponding actuals created, which then flow back into finance and operations to create the necessary cost and unbilled sales records and integration journals. But if you don't need all of that complexity for the expense management side, then the quick expense experience in the Dataverse app provides a simple way of creating those expense actuals, with less overhead, if you will. So hopefully that answers, that clarifies for folks. And I think we've covered all the other questions, and I think at this point we're just about at time, so I'm going to hand it back.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you everyone for participating today. I'd like to hand over back to Otto for the final words.
Excellent. Well, I've posted a link to a short survey there in the Q&A panel. I'd certainly love to hear your feedback about today's session and what you may like to see in future events as well. As a reminder, the recording of the session today will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page. There's a link in that chat there for you as well. And with that, hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for joining us.